Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Catherine. I am the chair of the Health and Wellness Committee, and I am joined by a few members of my committee we'll introduce in just a moment at the invitation of Jay Hassler. Say hi, Jay.
Hello, I just want to say we had this idea, and it's been sort of a magical thing for me because, Catherine and I had a wonderful conversation, and then I've done pretty much nothing to make this happen. And I just want to say out loud, this is maybe an idea that was started with me, but I want to give full credit to the people that did it. And with gratitude and love, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to learn, and I will try and ask insightful questions or keep my mouth shut.
I mean, questions. We'll take them even if they're not insightful. But
Oh well,
thank you.
okay. You might get what you're asking for. Okay.
Also, we are joined by Shannon Kiewit of the President's Own and also a certified trainer. Say hi, Shannon.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here and talk about this topic today. So, thanks for everyone joining in.
And then we're also joined by another Health and Wellness Committee member, Elise Bond. Say hi, Elise.
Hello, I'm Elise, and I repeat everything that Shannon said.
And I see another presenter of ours from our committee is just now jumping in. He's joining us from a rehearsal. We really appreciate his effort to make this time slot work. But we'll give him just a moment and then we'll introduce him. Before we do that, quick disclaimer. This is a health and wellness slash enthusiast committee presentation. And as such, I want to let you know that we are not authorized, we are not able to give you medical advice. All right, all of what we are presenting today is for your consideration. Different things about ergonomic devices that maybe you've thought of and maybe you haven't. Pros and cons, when you might want to use, when you might not want to use. But if you have questions about your specific situation, then we strongly advise that you ask your GP or maybe go see an evaluation or go seek out an evaluation with a physical therapist. So with that in mind, please take all of this for educational purposes, not as diagnosis and treatment. Keith, are you with us yet? Our last presenter is going to be Keith Spradlin. There he is. Say
Yep,
hi.
I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Spradlin. I just came in from a rehearsal about 10 minutes ago, so getting all my stuff together and everything.
No, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you making time. Okay, so we are talking today about ergonomic devices. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in because we have a lot of content to cover. And so I'm going to turn it over to Shannon. Shannon's going to talk with us about seats and cushions and footrests and all of that sort of thing. So if you are one who experiences maybe some back pain, maybe some hip pain, maybe some tingling in your legs, you're going to want to tune in for this. Oh, so sorry, Shannon, before we do that, I am so very sorry. Our last presenter is herself a physical therapist. We have Mary Bowman. She's a woodwind doubler and retired physical therapist. Mary, say hi.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Mary's going to be weighing in with insight from a PT point of view. Okay, so sorry about that. I almost left you.
So, give me just a minute. I'm going to share my screen here.
And while Elise is working on pulling that up, we've invited Elise to talk about neck straps and supports. So this would be like different types of harnesses. If you feel tension, if you feel soreness in your forearm or your wrist, you might want to tune in for this part.
Oh, right. And can you see my whole screen? I have
We
like a
see you.
bar on the side. Of course, this is the moment my cat decided to come say hello. This is Slippers. He's going to be my co-presenter today.
Terrific.
Say hello, Slippers. All right, let me get him out of here and I will get started. Okay, you got to get down. I knew as soon as I started talking he was going to do that. Okay, so I am going to be talking about Clarinet neck straps, harnesses, and supports in general. Some of these I'm sure you will have seen before, like the picture in the middle there, the kind of classic traditional neck strap, while some other ones might be new to you. So let's get started here. All right, so the first device I wanted to talk about is the traditional neck strap, of the elastic variety. Basically, you can see the picture on the right here. It is just kind of like a bungee material. Many of you, yep, exactly, Catherine's got one right there. Many of you have probably used this, tried this before. It comes with a little leather piece at the bottom that you hook basically right onto your thumb rest, which is very convenient. So some pros of this traditional elastic neck strap include they do provide gentle relief on the thumb and wrist. So if you're looking for just a little weight to be taken off of the clarinet or off of your thumb from the clarinet, this can be a good option. They are widely available. You can get them on Amazon. You can get them at your local music store, any music store website. You'll be able to find this one right here. And like I said, they're easily attached to the thumb rest. So generally you just kind of take the little leather piece and just twist it, and then it's right on there. Some cons of this neck strap include they provide some support, but not a ton of support. So if you're looking for something that is going to be more supportive, you might want to use some of the devices that I'll be talking about in a couple of minutes. And also something that I've been encountering lately, they can put obviously a lot of weight on your neck and can promote kind of that rounded shoulder forward head posture that can cause not just pain while you're playing, but pain throughout your life. This is obviously a very sensitive part of our body. So if you're going to be using one of these neck straps, you want to be very aware of your posture and making sure you're keeping all of these muscles strong and everything. And a fun story I have about these elastic neck straps, actually, I wrote they can be unwieldy. The reason for that is I have had students who have used these and they don't realize that since they're elastic, they're like that bungee material, if you pull down on it and let go of it, it'll shoot up like a rocket. So you have to be very careful with these if you are using these, especially in schools for younger students, that sort of thing. Oops. Oh, this is not letting me move forward. There we go. All right, so next we have another traditional neck strap that many of you have probably used, except this is what I'm calling the taut version. So instead of the bungee material there, you can see that it's just kind of a string, and you pull it and it basically takes more weight off of your thumb from the clarinet. So, like I said, one of the pros is that it provides more support than the elastic neck strap, and is also very widely available. This again attaches relatively easily to a thumb rest. So it usually has one of those little leather pieces that you just kind of twist. Or I'm not sure if you can see in this picture because now our faces are covering it, but some of them have a hook. If your clarinet has a little ring on the clarinet, then this is very easily attached. If not, there are rings that you can either get soldered on, or there are different thumb rests that you can buy to kind of turn the screw and attach a new one to get that to easily attach as well. And something I like about this kind is that it just has that little plastic piece there that you can just make it tighter, looser, very easily, even just during a couple of rests. You can just go boop like that, and you can adjust the height at which the clarinet is sitting. So again, a con is that this type of neck strap does put the weight on your neck here, the cervical spine, very sensitive area. And so again, you have to be very aware of that posture and making sure you're doing things to maintain your nice upright posture as opposed to clarinet goblin posture like this. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the devices that you may or may not have seen that are a little bit more rare. The first one I'm going to be talking about is the Jazz Lab clarinet holder. I believe the first device that this company put out was the saxophone holder, but now they have a clarinet specific one. So, and you can see here, it's basically a harness that goes over your shoulders. It goes down onto your torso to provide some, I guess, counterbalance. And then with the clarinet version, it actually has a stiff arm that comes out and you place your thumb rest right into the end of it there. I think I have a better picture on the next slide, so I'll show you that in a second. So these do remove definitely more pressure from the thumb, the wrist, the arms than your traditional neck straps. And the weight is on the shoulders rather than the neck, which is generally a better place to have weight pushing down. It's stronger. It's not quite as sensitive. You don't have, I guess, quite as many nerve endings going through that area. But this device is kind of rigid. As you can see, since it has that stiff arm that comes out and kind of locks into place, you are set in whatever angle you choose to place it in the very beginning. Many of the pictures on this website showed the angle further out like that, which is maybe more conducive to jazz playing. I think most of us classical players, not to say we're all classical players here, but many of us classical players do tend to hold it a little bit closer to the body for a little bit more control of the reed and the sound. So I do not have one of these. I don't know if you can put the angle closer to you. I imagine that you could, hopefully. But so that is a potential con, that it seems to be rigid and maybe we couldn't get it in exactly the angle that you wanted. Also, you'll see on the next slide that the thumb rest just kind of sits on it. So it seems like it may slide out of place somewhat easily. And while this is better than having the weight pulling down our neck right here, it still can promote that forward rounded shoulder posture that we are trying to avoid. So that's just something to keep in mind with this as well. Here I have a picture of the clarinet holder versus the sax holder. So you can see on the left of the screen here that attachment area that I was talking about, where it appears that the thumb rest just sits right on the end of that arm there. So that's just very interesting. The sax holder, which I actually have one of, can you all see me still? Am I in the corner? So I actually have a sax holder. I prefer, well, I shouldn't say I prefer it to the clarinet holder because I've never used the clarinet holder, but I think that I would prefer this because you can see here, instead of that stiff arm, it is that neck strap cord material that you can then make longer or make shorter relatively easily. And it has a hook. Oops, there we go. A hook on the end here that, again, you can just hook into that ring. So I like this because it gives more control over the angle. It gives you a little bit more movement or ability to move as you're playing. So just something to think about if you are interested in this. You can use the sax holder on a clarinet. It might just take a little bit more maneuvering to figure out how to attach it to your clarinet if you don't have that ring. Okay, so now we're getting into a totally different type of support altogether, where instead of supporting it with your body, it is actually supported by either the chair or the floor. So this is called the Bob instrument support. This is, I believe, a kind of remake / improvement over the Fred stands that used to exist. Fred was spelled with an H, so I assume that's why Bob is also spelled with an H here. Basically, this is a device that you attach to your thumb rest, and then you lengthen it so the distance between wherever your thumb is and the chair in between your legs, it just sits right there and takes the weight off of the instrument for you. The longer one on the right there is for clarinet and oboe. The shorter one is for English horn. So that's why there's two lengths, because I guess the thumb rest for English horn is much closer to the chair than it would be for clarinet or oboe. So I have used one of these, well, the Fred stand rather, in the past, so I can speak from experience here. It does remove almost all of the pressure off of your thumb, which is very nice. It sits on the chair, obviously, so you're not having anything necessarily pulling on your neck, your shoulders, or your back, not putting any pressure there. But the cons are the height must be set correctly. So if you have it slightly too low, you will still, again, get that posture like this. You have to make sure it's really set to a place that's going to encourage you to be sitting upright. And they can feel unsteady or somewhat wobbly. I actually, in the past, when I was struggling with some more severe arm issues, would use this and a neck strap simultaneously because this would take a lot of more weight off of my thumb than the neck strap alone, but then the neck strap would give me a little bit more of a sense of security. So it was kind of a little bit of a setup there to do, but it was effective. So I haven't needed anything like this recently, so I haven't tried this one, but I can say from experience that the Fred stand and now the Bob instrument support are rather effective at taking weight off of the arms. And here we have a similar device. So you can see here in this picture, the Bob stand functions similarly to this, the Ergo in that it's attached to the thumb rest and puts the weight on the chair. So again, this is just a similar device that has a few more use options, which I'll talk about in a second, but it removes almost all of the pressure from the thumb and the arms, which is really nice. No weight on the neck and shoulders. Same cons, the height must be set correctly. It can feel unstable and wobbly. However, this particular device does have multiple options for use. So in addition to using it while sitting on a chair, you can actually, I guess, buy an attachment which will lengthen it all the way down to the floor, as in that middle picture, or there is a belt attachment so that you can hook it onto your belt or your pant belt area, and actually have the weight be put there, so then it just basically floats in front of you. I personally would be nervous to do it that way. I don't think, I think there would be some awkward opportunities there for in a performance situation, but it looks like it's working well for this guy. So some other differences between this and the Bob stand are that you can tell if you look at that silver area on the stand, it does have more flexibility. So it moves around a little bit more, whereas the Bob stand is rigid all the way through. But besides that, it's very similar. I would imagine, again, you might run into some issues with the stability, especially standing up. I think that would be very interesting to try, but I would definitely want to try that before I used that in a performance for sure. So I believe those are the main devices that I wanted to talk about. I've provided links for the JazzLab devices, the Bob device, and the Ergo as the neck straps. If you type in Clarinet neck strap on Google, Amazon, Woodwind, Brasswind, or Music and Arts, rather, that's what they're called now, or something, you'll be able to find those very easily. But if you want to screenshot this, take a picture of it, you can find all of those devices pretty easily. And that is what I've got.
Thanks, Elise. I have some questions, and I have a feeling that Mary's going to want to weigh in on a couple of these, because some of them it look like, in most cases, there's not like a really good one-size-fits-all option, right? So on the one hand, we can look at the Bob or the Ergo and be like, well, that's great because it takes completely any weight off. Mary, my question for you is who would be a good candidate for some device like this?
So I would say that you want to be really careful to decide what problem you're trying to solve before you would choose a device. So I have some pretty significant thumb arthritis, and my posture is pretty good. Being a PT, I pay attention to that. So I do use a neck strap all the time when I play, and I use what she would have described as the taut neck strap. And that seems to have really quieted down the arthritic thumb. If you're also, in addition to the arthritic thumb, having a kyphotic posture, which would be that rounded shoulders, collapsing in on yourself when you play, the other ones that provide more support might be better for you, or if you have any neck pain, or if you have headaches while you play, or frequent headaches, because that can come from your neck pain or from the additional stress around your neck and your upper shoulders. So you might want to look at something that gets that neck strap off and brings it out to your shoulders. I have tried the JazzLab, but not with a Clarinet. I've tried it with a Barry sax, so the weight's significantly different. And I personally did not like it because of the pressure on my abdomen. I am short, and I never felt like I could get that bottom counterweight piece in the right place for me to feel like I could still breathe adequately while I was playing it. So that would be my caution for that one. The other thing with the Jazz Lab that I would have liked to see is what does the thumb rest, that because you're going to change the position of your thumb relative to your finger holes when you add that, when you slide your thumb rest into that piece. And I recognize that you're going to be taking the weight off, but the position of your thumb is still probably going to be back there, and the position of your thumb, I would think, would drop. And in order for us to play clarinet, we're already kind of at an end range of motion of where our thumb goes. Do you see what I'm saying? And I recognize the reason for that is because the thumb needs to stay horizontal to provide good support to the clarinet, good even pressure on both sides. So that would be something to consider and to feel when you're doing that. I think the Jazz Lab, if you wanted to try it, the one with the hook for the saxophone, might be the better option. So I'm really intrigued by the bob system, by the pole, and that might be something that I would consider trying in the future. That's actually could be a next step for somebody with some arthritic neck pain or some thumb pain. I've never tried that personally, so I would be interested to see how it attaches and how stable that feels. But to me, that one takes the weight off your trunk and off your thumb as well. So and gives you a little bit more flexibility with your posture. So
yeah, that's great. I love that you're bringing up posture, just because I actually know people who have been taught to play in a more like it's almost like an introspective kind of posture, right? Except that everything is closed off, like the rib cage is kind of clenched in, and the abdomen is a little bit, I mean, not like completely doubled over, but it all seems a little bit constrained. And then anytime we bring the shoulders up, we're causing, those traps and the various other muscles that are right here to contract. And in a long period of time, that's going to cause, like you said, like headaches and neck soreness and shoulder soreness. But there's a concern being brought up in the chat about the bob or the peg style supports, about you having to position yourself too far back on the chair, which we will get to seating in just a moment. We'll come back around to Shannon, but I wonder if that might be something where you could use something on the floor. But again, like Elise said, the stability of it maybe is a concern.
Yeah, I had that same thought.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, I had the same.
You go.
Okay, I had the same thought about the placement of the peg on the chair because I describe myself as a percher. Again, because I'm short, that gets my feet on the floor and myself positioned, which we'll talk about that with seating. But I would probably, if I were to experiment with that, I would experiment with one that goes all the way down to the floor because I'm short. So.
And possibly the Ergo Claire that extends to the floor when you're sitting would also extend to the floor when you're standing, could extend as well while you're sitting. I didn't check out the exact specs, but I'm sure they have them online.
Cool.
Well, no, if I could, I just want to suggest that this is a wonderful way for us to have sort of a litmus test for whether we are coming to the clarinet or the clarinet is coming to us. Because one of the things that I feel when I do it is that when I do these, what I realize is I've been coming to the clarinet more than I thought. And it's a way to sort of check our playing as well. And in doing all of this, trying to find the magical thing where it solves the problem we're looking to solve, while we get to keep all the good things in our clarinet playing that are working for us, is like a really, it's tough because we can't get too focused on what we're trying to solve and ignore problems we might be causing. But we also want to recognize, I think, that this can tell us a lot about our clarinet playing. And as a comedy thing, my question is, with the Jazz Lab, do you have to wear a jazz cap when you play it? Or is that just part of the picture? Like if I use a Jazz Lab holder with no hat, does it still work? Anyway, that's my bit. Okay, bye.
you need the cred. Yeah, well, and then on the topic of the supports that actually, I understand the idea of it wanting to distribute weight away from just your neck and shoulders. And so there's like that post that it goes into. But I could imagine not just the discomfort after a while of like pressing for those of us that it would hit like below the diaphragm, but then also the movement, when you go to take a deep breath and everything just kind of will shift a little bit. I could I could see that being an issue. So with all of these products, guys, with all of these devices, you're going to look at this and go, well, what would suit me? Maybe I don't really need a lot of support. Maybe I just need something to help me get a little bit of a boost because I was throwing chairs before the recital, getting everything in place, right? And so I just need a little bit of extra support. Or maybe you're like, no, I have debilitating, um, you know, arthritis or some other neurological condition in your forearm, in your wrist, even in your hand, and you're like, I need that support. So this is not a one size fits all. We're presenting, here are the ideas, here's what is good about them, and here is maybe what is not so good.
Well, and perhaps the idea that like a neck strap is going to move the needle like 10 to 15%, as opposed to the very stable things are going to take all the pressure off. And I think that that's where a doctor is important to consult, because if you need all that pressure off and the doctor says that, then the neck strap's not really, I think that that's where we have to bring in other people to really help us make our decision.
Yeah, we're not always the best observers of ourselves. Yeah. Okay, Elise, thanks so much. And Shannon, can I come back to you?
Yes, let's give this another shot. Okay.
Let's do it.
All right, let me try it one more time. If not,
We have a backup plan, if not.
okay.
Huzzah!
That working?
Yep.
Still
see you,
paused.
Joe.
You can see it?
Mm-hmm.
And you see my presentation?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's try it. Let's go. Okay, welcome back to talking about chairs and cushions. A lot of the information I'm going to present is probably things you know or chairs that you've used before in rehearsals and in performances. But maybe this gives you some idea of the type of chair you need to have in your home, because as I was saying earlier, how we sit is an extension of how we play, and as musicians, we sit most of the time. Most of what we do is seated in a chair. So investing in a good chair or finding ways to make your chair more ergonomic, I think is something that we should all really be considering. We put money into mouthpieces and stuff, but have we thought about our chair? So I want to give you some ideas for that today. So why does a good chair setup matter? All right, it matters because if you can see this slide, we want to make sure that we are not rolling back, meaning we don't have this forward flex posture. We're not in this C curve, because when that happens, it's restricting our breathing. And we want to make sure we have a chair that allows us to have that good breath support. Again, here, more consistent breath support, something that allows us to have a more open rib cage, good posture. It's very critical for what we do as musicians. And then we want to make sure we also have longer endurance. We want to be able to practice for long amounts of time while we're sitting in that chair. I also find that when I'm choosing a chair, I don't know if you've had this experience, you go to a venue and there's all these different chairs and it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears trying to find the right chair for you. This one's too short, this one's too tall, this one's too cushy, all those kinds of things. So we're going to talk through that too. All right. Here's the first chair, and
Shannon.
Yes.
So sorry, I'm going to interrupt you really quick. Yeah. Can you go to full screen on your presentation?
Yeah, I thought that's what it was doing. Can you see like a toolbar at the bottom?
Yeah, we see.
It seems like it's frozen. The slideshow presentation is frozen. The shared screen is frozen.
I see.
There we go.
Well, you got
It's
this
not full
one.
screen.
Can you see that? You'll see my notes at the bottom. That's good for now. Is that good?
Yeah, it'll work.
We'll do that. Okay. All right. So the first chair here is one that we've probably seen before, the Adjust Right musician chair. And with this chair, what's nice about it is it's fully adjustable. So it adjusts in a wide range. I've seen these chairs when I've been in concert venues, such as, like, I think the Chicago Symphony Orchestra uses something similar to this. It's not cheap. I want to say these range like in the 200 price range for this chair, but it is a good investment because we are seated a lot of the time. So this chair, as you can see here, it adjusts up and down for those of us who, are short or too tall, but also you can adjust it to where the front end of it tilts down, which is important because we want to make sure that our knees are below our hips. So this allows you to do that. And if you find, like I said, with Goldilocks and the Three Bears, you're not finding a chair that works right for you, this one's great because you can adjust it in many different ways. It has buttons up and down the legs that allow you to do that adjustment fairly easily. So it's easy to use. The next one that we see often are these cello chairs. And if you're someone who's like, oh, I got a cello chair, you're like, personally, I don't like them, but a lot of folks want to use these chairs because they do have that forward tilt. They do allow you to sit forward more. Now, this chair only has 2 height options from what I found. So with the Adjust Right chair, you can go up and down and get it perfect for you. This one just has 2, 18.5 to 19.5. So if you're someone who's tall, or you're someone who's short, this chair might be too tall for you. But because it's angled forward, those of us who like to perch on the front end of the chair, it allows us to have our feet flat on the floor. And so that can be helpful. This chair offers that nice forward balance, helps you have really good posture. And these cushions on these chairs are just the right amount. We don't want something too cushy because, again, it's going to sink down. It's comfortable, but we sink down and it restricts our playing, and we don't have as much endurance there when we're breathing. Next one, these Wenger musician chairs, and this is probably the most common one that we find. This is what I have at work. This is what I find most of the time when I'm, going to schools or different venues. This is what you're going to find most of the time. Now, this chair comes in 6 different seat heights, again, within 15 to 19.5. The chair I'm sitting in right now is 17.5, just to give you an idea. And that one feels really good for me. My feet are flat on the floor. I'm able to perch up on the edge of it. Just to give you a reference, if you want to see this is 15 inches. Okay, 15, and then all the way up to around 20. I don't know if that helps you to kind of see anything, but measure your chair and see. This one that I'm in is 17.5. It's designed to help you have really good posture. Okay, these chairs are designed to help you have good posture, sit up straight, feet flat on the floor, feel free and able to breathe well. Again, the seat cushion is similar to the cellist chair. They're very similar, but there's just slightly less back cushion. And I'll go back to this one so you can see the cello chair. See how there's more frame there all the way up and down, and maybe even the back of it is straighter. And with the Wenger chair, it's a little curved back and less there, okay? The next one are these, have you seen these chairs? I think they're called Aero chairs, the name of it. I haven't seen one in person, but I've been very curious about them. I know I put out, before I was asking folks, what are good musicians chairs? I did a poll, and a lot of people mentioned this chair. Some cool things about this chair is very lightweight, so you can actually transport it to wherever, your gig or whatever. Apparently it's really lightweight and folds up very small. Again, it has those nice features where it's completely adjustable and easy to adjust. You can get your knees below your hips. You can, this backrest here, it's very narrow, so it allows for mobility as you're playing, where other chairs you're kind of stiff in there. This one allows for mobility. You can still sit on the front end. If you see here, if you look at it, the front end of that seat slopes down, which is nice, gets the knees below the hips, but also I think it would be nice on the back of the legs. You don't have something that's like jutting into your hamstrings or cutting off circulation. Maybe some of us have numbness through our legs because of the chair. So this one's nice in that aspect. So if you can find a chair that allows that, I think that's a nice feature to have on there. Also, you can rest your feet on this chair also. I believe this one has like a footrest, which can be important for some of us who like to have a foot underneath the chair back behind us versus having the feet flat on the floor. So this chair is interesting. I haven't seen one in person, but something to look into. Another option is a physio ball. Now, this is not something I would do my entire practice session on. This is something I would use for, maybe 20, 30 minutes, maybe for like warm-ups, fundamentals. I use these with my students. The nice thing about physio balls is they're inexpensive. They're inexpensive. You can get a physio ball that has sand in the bottom of it, so it can stay put for you. And they come in a range of sizes from 18 to 34 inches. Okay, so it's going to fit a lot of folks. What is good for this ball is that it forces you to have an upright posture. Okay. It forces you to be in the right posture. It also probably helps to strengthen core as well as you play it. But again, not something I would be using for long amounts of time. Just like a fundamental check is what I would use that for. And then lastly, just talking about some ways you can modify a less than ideal chair. So if you have a chair like I have here, it's just like your regular old, hard chair. You can make it more ergonomic, I guess, with the seat cushions or even with blocks. So you want to look for, I would think you'd want to look for a seat cushion in a wedge shape, again, to get your knees below hips, and something that isn't too cushy or soft. So this wedge shape cushion is nice to have. And also it's convenient to, something I think about, carrying all my bass clarinets. I'm carrying like 3 to 4 cases sometimes. Then you have to add on a wedge chair to take to rehearsals and stuff. So something that is easy to transport. Okay, so this you can clip on to your clarinet case. It's easy to transport. The other thing you can do is use these blocks. You can make your own. I know I have colleagues who have made their own blocks to take to performances. If you have outdoor concerts and you're using those folding chairs, those terrible folding chairs where they're just too short and you can't reach the bass clarinet, and so you're stuck on what to do. You can either use like a cushion, a wedge, but sometimes that doesn't get you in the right position. So having some blocks that you can put on the back legs, so you have that forward lean, or if the chair is too short, you can adjust it to where you're sitting comfortably. And these also come in a range of heights, or you can make your own, and they're easy to carry around as well. Okay. And just a checklist of things to think about: red light, green lights with chairs that I went through, and I'll just go through them really quickly. A pelvis check. So one thing you want to do when you're testing out a chair, sit normally in the chair and then shift forward. If you feel okay, you don't feel like you're tipping forward. I feel like I'm tipping forward in the cellist chair, so that just feels uncomfortable to me, but a lot of people need that. You want to make sure you're not feeling uncomfortable in that way. And you also want to make sure that your body is stacked. So what I mean by stacked is that your shoulders are over your hips. You don't have forward roundness, or you're not sinking back into it. Red flags would be those things, sinking down into that C shape. You want to make sure that you can breathe easily when you're sitting in the chair. So again, when we're like this, we've talked about that with the neck straps. We don't want to be constricted here. So make sure that you're expanding the rib cage in all directions when you're sitting in the chair, that you're able to do that. You don't want to make sure, you don't want to have any kind of shallow breathing. Your thighs, your legs. Again, we talked about like pressure on the back of the legs. If it feels uncomfortable, that's a red flag. You don't want your legs falling asleep during concerts and things like that. So you want to have your weight in your sit bones, when you're sitting on that chair. And the next thing, stability check. You want to feel stable enough to play. You don't want to be adjusting around in the seat all the time, constantly fidgeting and moving. That just makes your practice inefficient. So finding a chair that you're not having to adjust and move all the time. What are some other things here? Just making sure your head isn't drifting forward as well. So having like a good backrest, finding a chair that allows you to do that. And just a 10-minute test of sitting down and playing through some long tones, playing through some fundamentals, and just making sure there's no discomfort. You're not shifting around. You're not restricting the diaphragm here. Feet are flat on the floor. All those little check marks that you want to have when you're looking for a chair. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. Maybe chairs you've already used and tried, maybe things you haven't thought about when you're using the chair. Oh, that's why I felt that way when I was sitting in that chair, or just some ways that you can make the chair you have more ergonomic and so your playing is better.
All right, great. Thanks, Shannon. So when I graduated with a music ed degree in undergrad, and when we graduated, one of the things that one of my professors was like so stuck on was, when you get your own, classroom, make sure you have good chairs. Like that's like a fighting point, right? Make sure that you have good chairs in your classroom. And yes, but also the cost, right? Because like you said, some of these are not cheap. Right. And so I'm curious, and maybe Mary can help us with this. How do you go about deciding which things to try? How do you look at something and say, that might suit me? How do I know what I need myself to do? If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, I'm going to go back to what I said at first with the support for the clarinet. What problem are you trying to solve? Do you feel like your legs are going numb? Your chair's probably a little bit too high because you're getting pressure on the back of your thighs, right? Are you feeling a lot of stress and tension in your lower back? Again, you might want to look at your seat height or a particular seat cushion that allows you to take that stress off. Do you feel like you're slumping when you're playing? I think for it's going to be completely individualized and based on what problem it is that you're trying to solve to get yourself into a comfortable playing posture. And for the classroom, again, a simple chair that you can offer some adjustments to your smallest and your largest students might be something to consider. So. But I haven't experimented a lot with seat cushions, again, in part because I'm short. And so most chairs are already verging on being too tall for me. So I tend to, depending on what instruments I have with me, I tend to put my flute case down on the floor and rest my feet on that to get my feet into a better posture. So it can be as simple as something like that to get that. Shannon continued to talk about the knees below the hips. You don't want them too far below the hips, but to make sure that you're not reversing that, to get yourself to that comfortable height. So something else. Oh, I love the idea of the exercise ball because I'm going to use the word proprioceptively. But what that all means is that your body is, you're giving more feedback to all of your postural muscles by sitting on that ball that isn't quite as stable. And so you are, even just feeling that can help you improve your posture when you transition to a chair. I would caution you though, I would say in looking at the picture of the ball that was shown to us, is that the ball was maybe slightly underinflated, and you want to be sure that again, when you're sitting on the ball, you're in that good 90-degree hip to thigh posture, 90 degrees, so you're at a right angle. Your thighs are mostly parallel to the floor or slightly down, so as opposed to up. So But I think a ball's a great idea. So I have one down in my basement. I might try practicing on that one soon.
But more as like a training
Yeah,
exercise
yes,
than as like,
exactly.
yes.
We use it a lot in therapy to just wake up your muscles because when we sit in a chair, so our brain likes to be lazy, and when you sit in the same place, your brain just says, "I got this. I'm checking out." Okay? And so the ball, because it's not stable, wakes everything up. It forces the brain to continue to concentrate on those postural muscles and continue to activate those postural muscles so you're getting a nice upright. Otherwise, you're going to lose your balance. But that would be more for a training of your postural muscles, which we should probably all be doing.
Thanks. Shannon, when you were looking at cushions, there are seat cushions, there are back cushions. Did you see any feedback on like these ones are preferable for any reason?
I think, like Mary was saying, some of the stuff is just unique to the person and what they need for their playing. I mean, you got the wedge shape, you've got donut shape, you got a gel, you got cooling if you want something to, for that. But I think it's just unique to what you need and having to experiment with what's going to work for your particular situation. If you've got, low back pain, if you need your feet on the floor or whatever, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So if I am a clarinetist with low back pain, is presuming that the alignment is good, but I still have that discomfort, maybe like on the back of the hips, around the tailbone, maybe just a little bit higher than that. Is there a particular design that will help me with that? Is that a pressure issue?
Well, it could be that and Mary can and bounce in on this too. It could be that you're just sitting, got a C curve too. So if the pain is there from that, the wedge would help to elevate you as well. But I know a lot of people would like the donut one because it kind of helps them to sit with the sit bones a little bit more firmly as well in the chair.
All right. And then my last question, this is maybe for both of you, Mary and Shannon. We talk a lot about having like a rounded posture this way, right? But I wonder about the inverse. Like, what if there's, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, what if there's like a roundness in the other direction? So for those of us that perch, I feel like that might be something that we could fall into. And so I'm wondering, is there some adjustment to our seat that can kind of discourage that?
For me, that's more of like, oh, I'm sorry, Mary. I was just say for me, it's more of reminding myself to stack my rib cage over my pelvis. So the stability ball kind of helps me to get in that posture.
I would also say that you might want to look at where your feet are on the floor, that you might want to play around with bringing your feet up or bringing your feet down and see how that impacts your lower back. And then I would also say that if you are experiencing significant low back pain, you should probably see someone and they may be able to help you find a more specific solution for your issues. So.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Shannon. I really appreciate it. Keith, are you ready?
Yep.
All right. Keith's going to talk to us about, let me close that window, sorry. Keith is going to talk to us about thumb rests and braces. So we kind of were working our way up from the seat and the floor to the support of the instrument from a harness or a strap. And now Keith is going to talk to us about that ever persistent and favorite problem among clarinetists and clarinet teachers, the wrist and the thumb. So Keith, go ahead.
All right, so I opted more for a kind of a show and tell type of thing. I will have to switch to a screen share to show a couple of the examples I don't own, but I do own quite a few of these, so I get to show them and kind of show them with my own hand. So the problem with the clarinet thumb rest, one, it hasn't been, really updated in, almost 200 years. aside from, a couple of screws here and there, things like that. But the main issue, like Mary said earlier with the thumb rest, is that the stock position of a thumb rest puts your thumb further down. The further your thumb goes down, the more stress it puts here in your hand, the more stress it puts on your wrist, the more stress it puts on the rest of your fingers, and it just kind of cascades down your arm up into your shoulder, and everything becomes just bad. And everyone who plays clarinet knows that the thumb rest is not the most comfortable thing. So I have one of my E-flat clarinets here. As you can see, we've got the wonderful little stock thumb rest here. The only pro that I can say about this is that it was free with the clarinet. With this, you get very little surface contact from the bottom of the thumb rest on your thumb, and weight distribution in terms of the contact point helps with like some of the management of the pain that you experience, things like that. I have seen some people take the little stock thumb rest and flip it upside down. I've seen that. I tried it one time. It's not as comfortable because then you're putting your thumb on this little plate. It's not the greatest thing ever. I have personally had a couple of clarinets, I've had this re-drilled further up. Then you start getting into, well, you have to find a repair person who's good enough to do it without drilling through your clarinet. You gotta, if you want to, cover up the old holes, that kind of thing. And so it starts to become a tedious task. You start to sink money into something that maybe you could fix through other means. Now, with these thumb rests and some of the other thumb rests, we get the ever favorite little kind of cushions that go on them, right? So, you get this, great, wonderful. It prevents the kind of sharp metal from digging into your thumb. These are good for a lot of things. However, for me personally, the one issue that I've always had with these is that when you put them on, the thickness causes your thumb to move further down ever so slightly. Even if it's, just, a millimeter or two, that slight shift does affect a lot of things. And so using one of these, whether it be like the little ProTech one you can get for, $4 or $5, your generic like little things that are open on both ends, you just slide through, right? They all work really well in the function that they're intended to be used for. But I think if you're going to use one, potentially moving the thumb rest up to accommodate for the thickness of the thumb rest helps. One thing that I have seen that I always thought was really weird, my undergrad professor one time gave me a piece of tubing. It wasn't this one, I just had this one so I could use it. And apparently this was an Elsa thing, an Elsa Verdere thing. She would go to Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, and she would get some of this tubing a little bit thinner than this, and she would cut a piece off and stick it on the thumb rest. And the thought behind it is that, normally it would stick out about this far, is that if you have that extra room, you can turn your hand a little further. You can rotate your thumb a little more around the body of the clarinet to kind of, pull your hand into a more comfortable position for your fingers. I've always thought that was interesting. It may work for some people. It may not work for other people, but it is a very cost-effective thing. You could just go to Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever your local hardware store is, get some of this little, rubber tubing, cut it, put it on the thumb rest. And if you're a teacher and you have a ton of students, if you ever have a student that comes in and says, well, I lost my thumb rest cushion, well, you can just take scissors. There you go. So that was always an interesting thing for me. As, things have gotten a little better, clarinets have upgraded, and now we have some adjustment in the thumb rest. Now, looking at the adjustability of this, you get around a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of vertical clearance on the thumb rest. The other nice thing about this is that the thumb rest itself is wider, and you get more surface area contact with your thumb. That way the clarinet is less likely to do this. Obviously, if it's in your mouth, you don't have that issue. But nevertheless, it, spreads out the weight on your thumb. This is probably one of the better advancements. You get thumb rests that have the little rings so that you can hook a neck strap to, that kind of thing. And this is a wonderful little thing. Most of them I have seen, they have been designing them with the regular people in mind, where you can kind of turn it with a nickel or a penny, right? Most people aren't carrying a giant flathead screwdriver with them. We're carrying little eyeglass screwdrivers. And so, you know, go in your car, pull out a coin, throw it in your case. You can always adjust this whenever you need to. These, in the case of this clarinet, this is a Royal Global Max, and I know this is the case on some of the Bakkuns and some of the other instruments. This thumb rest, I don't know if everyone can see here, but it is put into the body of the clarinet. Now that, for me, makes this a lot more difficult to, if it is still too low for you, it makes it more difficult to then have, you know, re-drilled further up on the instrument. You have to fill the hole that is left behind. You have to re-drill it, move it up, kind of put it into the body of the instrument, and that becomes kind of a con of these as well. Now, some other manufacturers like Selmer, Buffet, Yamaha, they have the traditional like screws that just go straight into the body rather than carving out a spot for the thumb rest and mounting it into the body of the instrument. I see pros for both. I see cons for both. But for me, that's one of the cons of this, is that you can't very easily get it moved. You have to find someone who really knows what they're doing, that kind of thing. So moving on from some of the more traditional styles of thumb rests, I want to talk about the two different types of the Tone Kuimen thumb rests. So this one is the entry-level Tone Kuimen thumb rest. I had this on my clarinet for about 2 weeks. I liked it. It was okay. But then I opted to go for the nicer model that was a little bit more customizable. So the way that this attaches to your instrument, you have a mounting plate. And you see here it's got 6 holes. Most of the time, if you have a traditional thumb rest that's held on by 2 screws, this can just, you know, plug and play. You unscrew yours, you screw this in, and it'll work. Sometimes you have to get it re-drilled for this. But the way that it works is you mount this onto the back of the clarinet. The thumb rest slides down. If I can get it to line up. It goes down and then click. And there's a little bit of vertical, you know, height change that you can have based on these little notches that are built into the back of this plate. There is also, if you look on the back side of this, there is a hinge right here, so that when your hand is in the thumb rest, you have a little bit of rotation, but also this screw moves up and down so you can move the actual placement of where your thumb goes, so that you can change the angle of your hand. The thing that I like about these thumb rests is that it takes the weight off of the end of your thumb and moves it further up to this segment of your thumb, allowing you to use more of the big muscles of your hand and your arm to support the weight of the instrument. So when you're using this, if you can see, my thumb is completely like, I can move it as much as I want, and this is what is supporting the instrument. So this is kind of the, you know, entry level one. I believe this one is around $70 to $80. Then you have the step up, the fully customizable, everything moves. It's wonderful. It's not wonderful, all at the same time. Tone Kuimen thumb rest. The way that this works, very similar to this one, you have a plate that mounts to your clarinet. Now with this one, you have to get everything re-drilled. It's got 3 different holes. And you take the thumb rest and slide it into place like this. And so when you're putting your hand through, you get the same contact point here. My thumb is free to move around. There are a couple of things that I love about this, and that is that it is fully movable in 3 different joints. I have another one so I can show you how it moves. So if you look here, this joint, fully circular. You have the hinge in the middle that allows it to swing open like this. And then where it makes contact with your thumb, this is fully turnable, fully pivots. And so it allows you to get it in the perfect position. Now, the issue with this is that it is very difficult to get it in the perfect position. It's really hard to do by yourself with one person. You're trying to hold your clarinet with your knees, and you're trying to get it exactly where you want it. And then they give you these 2 little bitty Allen wrenches to tighten screws on the thumb rest, right? So you're sitting here trying to hold your clarinet with your knees, and your thumb rest is moving around, and you're trying to take your other hand and reach around and tighten or loosen so that you can move the thumb rest. It becomes very difficult. It helps if you have a friend to do the process with you. But once you get it where you want it and you get it snugged down, it's not going anywhere. Now, a couple of the other adjustable things on this, there is a screw on the bottom that is height adjustable, so you can adjust the height of the thumb rest without changing any of the other components. So let's say with the A clarinet, since everything is a little bit wider, maybe you want the thumb rest to be a little higher or a little lower. You can turn that screw just ever so slightly. And also, on the bottom of the plate, there is an adjustable post here that the little Allen wrench goes in, and it can be moved up or down so that you don't have to move the screw. That way it can just be independent on the clarinet. When you buy one of these, you get this, and you get 2 of these plates, usually one for the B flat, one for the A. Now, the bad thing about that is that you only have 1 thumb rest and 2 plates. And if you're someone who frequents orchestra and you play a lot of pieces that have a lot of shifting back and forth, not only do you have to worry about changing a mouthpiece or a mouthpiece and barrel, but you also now have to slide your thumb rest off, slide it on the other one, and it's a massive pain. I've been in orchestra and I've had to do it where I just held my clarinet with the plate because I didn't have enough time to switch. The other thing that it does not say on the website, but you will find out if you ever get one of these, this plate is incredibly sharp. It is machined to be exact, for the fit to go into the back of the thumb rest, but it is very sharp, and I have cut myself several times. It's really difficult to put the instrument together because you're trying to grab and you're, trying not to cut yourself on the corners, that kind of thing. So that is one drawback. Also, the retail on this is a little over $200, and if you're someone who frequents playing in orchestra, you probably want to have 2 of them, which means you have to buy 2 sets of them. So it becomes very expensive, not to mention having to find a repair person you trust who you have to pay to drill all the holes and put the thumb rest on, and then take the time to figure out how to adjust it, all of those good things. So there are a lot of pros and cons with them. It's kind of up to you. I like them because it takes the weight off of this part of my thumb and frees up a lot of the tension in my hand. So for that, it works well for me. I didn't like having to pay for them, but you do what you have to do. So now I'm going to switch to screen share, and I'm going to show a couple of the other options that I don't personally own, and hopefully this will work. Can everyone see this?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is the Selmer Prologue. This is a new student model clarinet that Selmer came out with. I don't know if it was in the last 2, maybe 3 years. You can see it has a little animated thing with how it moves. This thumb rest actually not only moves up and down, but also side to side. And so when you look at the curvature of the hand, trying to figure out, your perfect hand position, trying to make sure that you're moving only from, this knuckle not trying to get this kind of motion in your fingers. This type of thumb rest really appeals to me in the way that it is so customizable. Because for a student, especially students with small hands, you can set it so that they're not trying to manhandle the clarinet, because the B flat most times is too big for young children. And I love that they came out with this. I really wish that they would sell this on its own so that individuals could, buy this thumb rest and, put it on their own instruments, because this is a very cool device. Someone should talk to the higher ups at Selmer and tell them they could make a lot of money on this. But another option is by Ridenour, and it's this thumb saddle. So to me, the way that this feels is that of a saxophone thumb rest. Catherine has one right here. So Mary said it earlier, talking about the spacing on the hand. When you hold the clarinet, you kind of have this like pinch in your hand because the body of the clarinet is the size that it is. The best analogy I can use is, imagine you're holding a golf ball versus holding a tennis ball in terms of like the circumference. And if you didn't factor weight or density and you tried to throw them, the easier one to throw would be the tennis ball because of the size. It's easier to, get all of your muscles involved versus holding a golf ball. You have to pinch it, and then it's a little different. And that's no different with the regular size of the clarinet. This thumb saddle sits out from the body. So if we're looking at the clarinet, it sits out probably about here, and then your thumb ends up over here, which opens your hand up, allows for a little bit more freedom, that kind of thing. And it's also, as you can see here, a much more affordable option in comparison to some of the other things. So that's all I have as far as thumb rests and saddles and, all of the brace thingies. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
That's great. Thank you so much, Keith. And yes, the thing about turning the thumb rest upside down, I've totally done that with students. Like, take out the screws in their lesson, flip it over, put it back, and then put a cushion over it. It's funny that you said tubing, because that's often what I will use, and just like cut a little length, although I don't extend it out as long as maybe you showed. So
yeah, I've seen it much shorter. I just happen to have this tubing. I would probably say about maybe there.
Yeah.
Maybe an inch to an inch and a quarter.
And then just squish it. And this is a hardware store. Just, you can buy a bunch of it for not very much. And then I agree. I love the thumb saddle because it opens my hand up more. I don't feel like it's quite so closed. And so I feel like there's a little more freedom. That picture of the Selmer thumb rest, I sat there and wondered, why? Nobody wants their thumb rest lower. Like, I know no one who wants their thumb rest lower than the stock, right? And so I've always wondered, why do they put it on there in the same place that you would put a standard thumb rest and then make it go lower? And I noticed on that Selmer picture, I don't know if you can pop it up there, how hard that would be to do, but the placement of it is so much higher. It's like above the F sharp. Yeah, the B natural F sharp key, that little banana key, as I call it with my students.
Yep.
And the placement of it is like so much higher.
Yep. So if you look at where this thumb rest is drilled in, it's almost equal with that key. And this is at least a half inch above.
Yeah. I wonder why it's taken us so long to think that maybe this is a good idea. Mary, I have a question for you as you are, as you're looking at all of these options. It seems to me that you would want, just because this is principles of basic physics, right? You have a let's call it a lever here. You have
Correct.
like this fulcrum, and then your load, the further it goes away from that fulcrum, the less mechanical advantage that you
Correct.
have.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so in some of these thumb rests, like what do you see that you're like, I like it for that reason, and here's something to consider?
Yeah. So, oh gosh. Okay, now I'm gonna have to remember them. So the Ridenour one is intriguing because it allows your hand to open up. Um, that last Selmer one is very intriguing because it's placed higher, because you have two things really going on there. You've got the lever arm and the added force that goes through the lever arm, but you also have at the base of your thumb, as you bring your thumb down this way, you have bone compression. So that's the other thing that happens in there. Most arthritis is your bones, so it's not always just your muscles that are the issue. So the placement, anything that can place the thumb rest higher or allow that joint space to open up, can also be an advantage. So the Koeman is an investment, but it appears to do that in a better way than some of the other thumb rests that are presented. And then again, the Yamaha looks like, why can't we do that? That we just bring the thumb rest up and give that movement higher on the back of the Clarinet. So
Yeah. And when you were talking about the compression just now, you said up higher,
yes.
and that's just simply the placement of the thumb. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if
it
you look at my
going
thumb,
this
I
way.
have to have my holes I got to cover the holes, right? So
Right.
if my thumb rest is here, so I'm looking at this joint that's happening right here, this motion here. If I can bring that thumb rest up a little higher, you can see that joint space is going to open up. Does that make sense?
Oh, right here.
Try to-
Yeah, now everybody on the call is like doing this.
Yeah, of course. Which should actually feel good, because you're moving that around a little bit. So, yeah, that's where I get really sore, is right down here. Yeah. So.
And then what does that do to everybody else?
I probably would be best if I had my Clarinet and could feel it back here, because that's the piece that you have to play with, is, does it move these fingers? So I would think that anything that relaxes your thumb joint and your thumb would relax the rest of your fingers. You would not carry the tension in your hands. So, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the comments had a question, would this tone Koeman be good for the bass clarinet? If you're sitting down, I don't know that it would be worth doing this for the bass. Maybe if you, like, let's say, stood and played, but most of the time you'd be using a standing peg or a neck strap. The other thing I forgot to mention, this tone Koeman, you can actually hook a neck strap here. And so not only do you get the added benefit of the weight distribution further up your thumb, you also get, because it's so thick and sits so far out, you get the added benefit of the Ridenour, where your thumb sits a little further out, and you can hook a neck strap. And so it's kind of like a 3-in-1 type of thing.
Yeah, good. And it seems like the thing that I like about this part of the discussion is it seems like there are options that are a little bit less expensive to try and explore. Hey, does this make a difference? And if so, you can start to just take note. We use that a lot when we're talking in the health and wellness committee. It's like, just take note, like sit there and take a look at it and see. But if that's something that you want to then try investing in further, because like you said, for me being an orchestral clarinetist, and I'm like having to throw, I have 2 of these. Actually, I have 3 of these, one for my E flat and one for my A and one for my B flat. And so I don't have to worry about switching it unless I'm wearing a neck strap, and then I just have to do a quick change. But yeah, cool. Okay, so that wraps up. Yes, Keith.
There's a question.
Yes, I see.
Someone has a question.
Mm-hmm. That wraps up our like presentation part, and so we are going to take just a few minutes. We don't have a lot of time, but if you have questions about any of the things that we've looked at today, any of the topics that we've covered, you can either drop them in the chat window and we can take them from there. Also, I see, Roseanne, you've raised your hand, so go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question for us.
Here we go. Got it. With the Reedman, it looks fascinating. I never saw that. Can you also use a neck strap with it? Where do you attach the neck strap if you're using the Reedman?
Are you referring to this thumb rest?
Yeah. No, not that fancy one. The regular one, the Reedman one that you showed. That looked very simple.
The Ridnour?
Oh, the
Reednour,
Ridnour.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you use a neck strap at the same time simultaneously?
I do. Now, mine is because I just have like the stock thumb rest that's on there. I will
Me too. Okay.
I will take the strap on my neck strap, like the connection strap, and
Yeah.
I'll put it on, and then quickly pop. The Ridnour just pops right on and off, like it literally just slides. I don't know if you can see. It just slides
Oh,
on
I
and off.
can't. Wait a minute. How do I see that?
We'll go back on the replay, and you should be able to see it then.
All right.
But
So they both just slip on. You mean also the neck strap? Can
yeah,
I also ask you about the neck strap? The elastic, is that good? I've never seen that. I think I'd like to try that.
well, is it
It's
good?
not as good as the taut one.
Is it good? Depends on what you're looking for.
Just a
if
bit.
you are
Just a bit of relief.
Yeah, if you're looking for something to just take a little bit of the pressure off of your hand, then an elastic gives you a little bit more freedom of movement. And for wiggly
Okay.
players like me, that might be a good thing. If you tend to be a little bit more stoic in your posture, then and you need more relief off of that hand, then perhaps a more rigid neck strap would do well for you.
What's wiggly mean? That you move a lot?
Yes, I move a lot when I play. Yeah, Mary
So
knows.
do I.
She's
So then I
sitting there
can't
nodding.
I shouldn't use the elastic you're saying.
No, for me, because I move a lot, this moves with me very easily.
Which one, the rigid or the elastic?
The elastic.
Okay. All
Mine
right. So
is the
maybe it is
elastic.
good.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Well, I also just want to add, like using the neck strap, one of the things that's nice about it is if you're only looking to move the needle a little bit, and you can actually play with it or without it. You can actually make that choice as you go, and it's easy to put on and take off. And so what I found is when I use a neck strap, I'm not really using it all the time. Like if I'm practicing for a long time or it's a long performance, or like ultimately, that's something that can be used it can be used on and off because it's not really necessarily changing how you're playing. The thumb rests, I always feel like I've got to make some version of a commitment, even if it's just for the duration of my practice period or the performance. I guess you could take it off for the performances, but I always feel that that's more that's more of a commitment. I feel like the neck strap is I can break up with it very easily and then ask it back into my life all within one performance.
And again, you have to kind of think about what are you trying to accomplish? Do you find that I need that support all the time? In which case, a neck strap might be, a more inexpensive way to go about it than maybe the harnesses or even a peg. But if you need that additional support, if you feel like maybe that pressure across the back of your neck just will not suit you. I had an adult student start actually earlier today, and she was on saxophone, and we were talking about the difference between harness and neck strap, and she was like, I can tell already I'm not going to be able to do this with a neck strap. It's applying too much pressure just to my neck. And while for some of us that's fine, for some of us we might need that weight distributed and same for clarinet. You might need that weight distributed a little bit differently or taken off altogether in the form of like the bob or the ergo peg. So, okay, any other questions? I don't see any. Oh, I do see one. Oh, that's a good question. And Keith, you might be able to help us with this one. So
Yep.
The question is that the person had her thumb rest moved up, and now it sits in her clarinet case differently. If you have one of these additional thumb rests, or if you make modifications to your thumb rest, does it require you to have your case adjusted as well?
Thankfully, I have not found this to be the case. The plate sits very close to the instrument, and so I haven't had to do anything, but I also have a Marcus Bona case, and so I have the case where my clarinet is suspended in the air, but I also have a BAM case, and I've used it in there too, and I haven't noticed any issues with it. The only issue is that you have to find a place to put this. That's the only thing, is you have to find another compartment to put this in so that it doesn't get smushed or moved around, because the last thing you want is to show up to a gig and your thumb rest isn't in the right place and you don't have your Allen wrenches with you to move it.
Yeah, and all of those would need to come off. On mine, because I do have that Ridenour thumb saddle, it happens to fit in my case without me having to take them off every time. But if your case is a little bit tighter fit, it may be just that any of these, you have to just pop it off, or the Koiman, you just slide the actual thumb rest off and leave the plate on there. But yeah, or like carry them in some sort of separate container. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, okay. So the question is about hypermobility. This is an excellent question. So where it's really difficult because there's not that, I'm going to use the word rigidity, but go with me on it, in the joint, that they are constantly fighting the joints hyperextending. And so what sorts of resources might we have for that? If any of our panelists want to jump in to offer some insight on that, then we can. That would be a super interesting topic for us in our committee to discuss. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah.
It's like my first initial thought with this, thinking about obviously the downward push on the thumb from the weight of the clarinet, right, causing the hypermobility to be an issue. My first instinct would be try a neck strap so that it, pulls the bulk of the weight of the clarinet up. You don't have to push up as much, and so maybe that hypermobility won't be as much of an issue. That's my initial thought on that.
I would say too, you mentioned medical professionals. I don't know if you've seen a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. I would, a good occupational therapist should be able to, you should be able to bring your instrument with you and show them what's happening, and they may be able to help devise splinting or something like that that will help support your joints. My concern is if you have generalized hypermobility, that a neck strap may be too much for your neck. So that's something to be careful with. You have generally a harness type situation with the hooks over your shoulders. You're not into a joint on those. And so the weight would not be through, they're through your shoulders, yes, but they're not through your shoulder joint. They're typically through the mid area of your shoulders here. Could be something to try to help take some of that weight off of your hand. But I wonder if a thumb splint a supportive thumb / wrist splint that you work with an occupational therapist to develop might be something that could be beneficial if that is where the bulk of your problem is. So.
Yeah, and Mary, you might be able to answer this for us too. By putting the pressure on the thumb, right? The rest of the hand is engaged as the thumb is engaged. They are all kind of like connected.
They're all connected, yeah,
to some extent.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
I wonder if in the effort to hold the instrument up, if that might induce more like overcorrection in
Muscle,
the rest of
yes.
the hand.
Exactly. And I don't know, I know that I've struggled with issues, not so much as I've gotten older, because I'm not as hypermobile anymore, but with some people will have issues with locking joints. And there are splints that can be devised to help support a joint that locks in when your muscles get tired of trying to hold that up. So supporting the joints, but I would say that a good creative occupational therapist. We PTs tend to deal mostly with gross motor trunk type issues. Occupational therapists tend to deal more with hands and shoulders and splinting support for hands and shoulders. And many occupational therapists actually make splints themselves that they can adjust for you that may help. So that's probably a little bit outside the scope, but yeah. Depending on if you live in a bigger city or closer to a bigger city, a hand center might be an option for you. Some cities with orchestras may have OTs and PTs that specialize in musicians, and that might be a route for you to go. I think that's a little more difficult to access if you're in a smaller town, but those could be some thoughts. So
yeah, and our discussion today was a lot more about like the overall support of you and the overall support of the instrument. But without getting out ahead of my skis, my husband has difficulty maintaining his joints. He's got a lot of hypermobility in his joints, and he actually, when he does play clarinet, uses a wrist brace with a thumb support like in the brace, and he'll put it on when he starts to play, and then he'll take it off when he's done. So yeah, that is an option. Also, if it's the actual joints, and this is where I don't know how much experimenting we would want to necessarily encourage, although with something like a ring splint, that is pretty minimal, like you could try it. But again, like Mary said, you can go and have them made by a hand therapist, and they're just, if you haven't seen them before, it's almost like, here, I'll use my wedding rings. It's almost like if you just took a pair of rings and fused them together, and it just kind of helps hold that joint in place. But this would be something that would be very interesting for us to discuss in the future. It's a little bit outside of this conversation, but we really appreciate you bringing that up. Thanks so much. Okay. If there are any more questions, we can take them, but we really do need to wrap up. So this is your last shot. Either drop it in the chat or raise your hand.
Yeah, I mean, before, I don't want to interrupt you, but before we go, I'm sure you said this at the beginning. I wasn't really paying that much attention. I just want to highlight that our fearless leader at the ICA is named Jessica Harry. She's been here. She's been quiet because it's late at night because she's in Korea, but she is at the center of everything that happens that's great at the ICA. And if you haven't checked out the ICA and everything that has available to you, there's a lot. And Jessica is at the center of all of it. And I know Jessica doesn't want to talk, but I just want to say thank you. I love you. And we wouldn't be here without you.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Jessica. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. If you have questions about anything health and wellness related, you can always find us on the ICA website. There is the list of committees, and we are there. If you have questions about the Enthusiast Committee and what does that look like and what does it entail, then Jay is really good about answering questions. And again, you can find him on that ICA website. There's a list of committees that are listed there. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.